coach and consultant, representing Alpha Monk. Yeah, thank you so much for being with us. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about Alpha Monk?
Well, Alpha Monk started in 2018 as a platform for critical thinking on creativity with 3 different elements: community, collaboration, and coaching. So talking about community is all about building up some form of collective of people who could then move on to collaborate together, not just talk about art and talk about our relationship to art and creativity, but also be really instrumental in making things together, coming together and making the world more beautiful. And then the coaching level, because I just saw that there are, in each of the conversations I've had with creatives, 3 challenges that seem to rise to the top, being self-belief and getting your work done, and then the whole financial challenges. So in the coaching, we try to address that. So that's a little bit about Alpha Monk. We've held like regular happenings before the COVID world. We held regular happenings like every month, but now we just did one last night. You were there on Zoom, so we've just started doing those. So I think we're going to have to sort of accept that we're online, even though it's a bit tricky.
Yep, definitely has its challenges. So how have you found it as a creative? How have you found this time of change, of transition, of challenge? How have you found it personally? And what impact do you feel it's maybe had on your creative process and creative journey?
I think that it's had the effect that my creativity has been sort of interrupted. I feel like like, for example, I had an audition for something recently and my voice wasn't doing what I would normally expect it to do, because I was singing very regularly, like several times a week for hours on end, whether it was in the studio or live. And then I just found that my voice wasn't responding the way that I wanted it to. So I felt like a little bit out of practice in that way, but then maybe a little bit better in practice when it comes to instruments and writing. So whereas the things that I was doing in public, like I also went to Iceland recently and did a speaking engagement, and I felt really rusty there too. So I think there's a lot of rust, but also there's a lot of things that I feel like have happened. Like sometimes I still don't know what day is.
Yeah, merged into one.
Yeah, totally. I thought Saturday was Sunday this week. Yeah.
Well, in a way that could be cool, because that means the next day you're like, right, extra weekend, extra day, I'll take that.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, let's, if you're going to get it wrong on that side, right, where you're kind of going backwards instead of going forward. So that's the thing.
Love it. So tell me, yesterday you had a happening over on Zoom. It was cool. Tell the viewers here a bit about what that was about.
Well, it was about the positive impact that creativity can have on your mental health. There was a survey in 2016 by the University of Westminster amongst musicians. One of the findings was that 71.1% of those surveyed had experienced some form of mental health challenges, from depression to panic attacks. But on the other side, you can see that music is supposed to be therapeutic. We use it therapeutically. So there's some kind of disconnect that is happening between the people who are making the art and the people who are users of the art. So in Alpha Monk, we envisage a world where both the users and the makers of the art are experiencing good mental health, right? And one of the things that I've noticed with creativity when I've been doing coaching is that we don't always have a healthy relationship to our creativity. There's often a sense in which our creativity is something we fight with, is something we put a lot of pressure on. Like we force it to pay the bills. We we forced creativity to take care of us. Whereas back in the day, people viewed creativity, when it's sort of in the ancient world, they definitely viewed creativity as something that we were supposed to take care of. Right. So we were not the fathers of creativity. We were the sons and daughters of creativity. But we moved into a world now where there's a pressure on us to be the fathers of it, you know, and there's a pressure on us to be perfect with our creativity. So what our event was about yesterday was about trying to help us to get a better relationship to our creativity, because, you know, it's supposed to be good for you. It's supposed to be fun.
And I love the fact that it's about treating it as something precious, right? Not something. It's almost like personifying creativity in a way. It's like, you know, to look after it, to take care of it in a way, to really appreciate it, because I think it is easy to take it for granted. Like as you said yesterday, there are different ways to be creative. You know what I mean? Like taking a different route home, or just doing something different. It's kind of like it's a facet about us which can be taken for granted easily, especially if we only think of creativity in terms of a painting or a song or something, you know, like that. But just seeing how it interweaves into our life, I think there's something powerful in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, you know, one of our values is that everyone is an artist. So I don't believe that there are people who are creative. Humans are creative, because creativity is the ability to imagine something that doesn't exist and then bring it into this reality. That could be anything from a relationship to a design of a chair to whatever. Do you see what I mean? So creativity is always something that we have as by virtue of being human. And a lot of times, hey, Lena, I feel like people find it hard to see themselves as creatives, because it's typically been seen something that's the domain of people who do music or people who are artists, in the traditional sense of the word. But as you mentioned, you know, like, you know, if you put comedy into a conversation, then you're being creative about a conversation. Take a different route home, you're being creative about your route. And what happens is that your brain starts to create different connections in your synapses, so that you start to actually create yourself as a different person as well with your creativity, because there are new routes that are being developed, right? So the benefit of that is that you can then think more on your feet and find solutions, creative solutions to things in your business, or creative solutions to problems in the world. So creativity is enormously important. The problem is that, obviously, you know, creativity is not something that we can always get paid for, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it just because we don't get paid for it. You know what I mean?
And
so,
and we are, as I was saying, and that's the more traditional view on I guess, or the traditional way of thinking about creativity would say that. But whatever we're doing that we're getting paid for, there must be an element. I'm hoping there's an element of creativity in how we do it. Or do you think some jobs are just more painting by numbers, do you think?
Well, I think that there's two things. You can be a creative in the way that you live your life. So when you go into work, you can be creative about your uniform, or you can be, just what I mean, you can be creative about the way that you interact with the customers, if you're customer service or whatever. Like one time I was on this plane, I heard this guy do a completely weird safety announcement. Right, it was very, very creative. It was completely different. You know what I mean? He put on a kind of funny voice and was just creative about it. And that was his way of getting something out of a job. He has to do that announcement every time they take off, right? So in order to avoid being bored stiff, he had to become creative about it, right? So firstly, you can be creative as an individual, and then yes, I believe also you can be creative in the way that you do your job. So even if it's that you're a cleaner, then, you know, how do you set up your cart for cleaning? You know, how are your products set up? Is it set up so that when you go into that room where you know you've got to clean that toilet, that you've got your little piece of plastic that you use to open up the lid so you can wipe inside? I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? Whatever it is that you're doing, you can be creative about it. It's really important to it's really important to be open to you being an active creator, a work of art yourself, and creating works of art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know it yourself. You meet people and you just know this person is full of life, and
Mm.
it's the people who are doing it because they know that this world can be very dark.
Mm-hmm.
Because of Flora, this world can be dark, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to brighten it up. And
Mm-hmm.
creativity is one of the only things we've got that can allow us to fight
Mm-hmm.
against the darkness that so easily can overwhelm us, or the darkness that easily can take away the joy that we've got in our life. And you
Mm.
can be creative no matter where you are. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, like even when it comes to the masks and stuff with Quran, you've seen people getting
Yeah,
creative about that,
very creative. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, yeah, I think
definitely.
that's important.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. I love that. Yeah, no, there's a lot to be said there, and I think as we kind of obviously here at Templeway, where we've got this whole Black Future Month idea and
Mm.
working with kind of like how we as a community can shape the future in creative ways, really, that acknowledges uh, so many elements of our history. Um, what when you look at at our journey as Black British people, how do you like? And I know you've got a lot to say on this. How do you what are some of the creative elements of our history that you like to draw on? Because I know you're really quite connected to I guess, the creative energy that has always been in our community, even in the midst of the struggles of our story. Um, how could you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I think that Black Brits have always had to be creative because life hasn't always been easy for them. They moved to the UK. The Windrush generation, at least, obviously there are Black British people that have been creatives as a part of the fabric of British society going back hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
Black Europeans have been a part of the tapestry of life, you know, playing in royal courts and being businessmen and businesswomen and you know, improving the lot of different people in the society. But speaking specifically about the Windrush generation, when you look at the way that, for example, when they came to the UK, and then churches, white churches, were also a microcosm of white society,
Mm-hmm.
which was in no way ready for this influx of Black people, and who treated them as immigrants, even though they weren't immigrants. Because, like my grandma, for example, when she moved to Britain, she had a British passport because Barbados at that time was still a part of the British Empire. So she didn't immigrate. She moved from one part of the empire to another part of the empire with her British passport, right? Um, and you could ask, well, okay, what was it that made people think that she was an immigrant? Then, you know, obviously it's skin color that did that, because that wouldn't have happened for other people who had a different who
Same
had the
skin color. Mm-hmm.
same skin color, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't have
Yeah.
been obviously different, so to speak. So when they came and the environment was hostile, and they experienced something where churches were like, don't come back next week. So that experience meant that they had to be creative about how they could do church. So they went and rented um, town halls and school buildings and started to hold worship services for themselves. And then there was a sort of fusion of the West Indian flavor and you know, their church style that meant that they had to be very creative about what they did. So I think that's the first thing that I noticed about Black Brits, that their reaction to the context that was in some ways hostile to them made them super creative,
Mm-hmm.
because it meant that they had to create spaces where they could be themselves, and spaces where they could be they didn't want to create those spaces. They wanted to be a part of the whole, and they didn't see
Mm-hmm.
themselves as anything other than British.
Yeah.
But when they were faced with these ideas, then they decided, okay, well, we're going to have to create spaces.
Yeah.
So they did that in church, and then parallel to that, you've also got that happening with blues dances and the development of UK reggae, right? Because those were the places where people could create those spaces. And you know, there's some research that talks about immigrants who moved to different countries. We call them immigrants, but immigrants who moved to different countries, and then like playing loud music in their cars. Like, why are they playing loud music? Why is it, why is that a thing? It's because they are claiming territory, right? They're trying to create a safe space because the community, the environment is hostile for them in many ways, right? So they did that parallel with the music, and you've got like these blues dances that are happening on one end, which is dealing with the more sensual and the more societal issues, and then you've got the church, which is dealing with more utopia and escapism from that. So they're both dealing with it in two different ways, but it's all based around creativity. The creativity of music in church, the creativity of music in the dances, and then you've got the emergence of things like Lovers Rock as a UK music phenomenon.
We know about Lovers Rock.
Well, my dad, Dennis Bovell, is widely regarded as the progenitor, the creator of the Lovers Rock genre, right? So he's got the first big hit that was sung by a black British reggae artist. There are lots of other black British artists who had big hits before, Shirley Bassey, I mean, those types of people. Jazz Ellington, do you know what I mean? So what they were able to do was they were able to create this genre which fused the reggae, which was more sort of in Bob Marley's type of vibe, more maybe political. They decided to make reggae love songs. So that was something new. And then the Jamaican scene actually started to emulate what they were doing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were setting pace over here.
Yeah, so the Jamaican scene started to emulate what they were doing. Obviously, the Jamaican scene is where reggae comes from, but the Black Brits did something to it that hadn't been done before. So when you see the emergence of these things that they had, they fell into the arms of love as a way of, dealing with their creativity. They wrote those songs and they created this whole new genre, right? There's a film out right now, or coming out very soon this month, directed and written by Steve McQueen, which is one of the, and it's called A Small Act Collection. It's 5 films dealing with the Black British experience, the Black West Indian British experience.
Tell us the name again. Tell us the name of it again.
It's called Small Acts. It's going to be on Amazon Prime, and I think they'll premiere it on BBC as well. It just got premiered in New York at a film festival in New York recently, and my dad's song that he wrote and produced and recorded and invited Janet Kay to sing is in the film.
Okay, cool.
And Pops is in the film as well, actually. He's got a role in the film, yeah.
Nice.
He plays the character Milton, so look out for it if you see it. But, yeah. So just,
What's this song?
No, Silly Games is the song, right? So it's widely regarded as the Lovers Rock anthem, right? Janet Kay sing Silly Games. I mean, it's the song that everyone knows because it was.
How's it go again?
It was in the charts, 1979. I'm not going to sing it. You have to look it up. Look it up. But yeah, so yeah, that's what I think about Black British creativity is that when you're pushed into a corner. Yeah, who don't know Silly Games, innit? To ask him. I mean, you're a disgrace to blackness, Luke. What do you mean? How does it go? No,
try the thing. You got to try a thing, man.
Yeah. Whatever. So you've got a whole range of times where we've had to use it. Also, been used creativity in terms of activism and sort of telling our story for one thing, and then also trying to balance out the injustices that Black British people have endured. I mean, even when you look at the contribution of Black British musicians and creatives, there's some sense in which they're not really seen as authentically British. So you've got like Sade, who in 2011 she outsold Adele, she outsold Elton John.
Wow.
But people wouldn't necessarily, I think she sold like 200 million albums or something, but people wouldn't necessarily see her as a Brit because she's half Nigerian, but she's a black Brit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a big sense, there's a real sense in which the contribution and the creativity of black Brits hasn't really been seen. And sometimes, you know, there's probably a debate about that as well. Because when I was growing up in school, people say, yeah, I'm not British, I'm Jamaican or whatever. And I'm saying to myself, how are you Jamaican, bro? How are you Jamaican, bro? Like, you're from Brixton. Have you been to Jamaica? Like, what? You know what I mean? So I think that's been a journey as well of us sort of recognizing black Brits, and plus we're very rare birds as black Brits anyway, because there are only like 1.5 million black Brits in the UK. You've got like 500,000 West Indian black Brits, 500,000 African black Brits. Well, you know, I would argue we're all African, but anyway, you know what I mean. And then 500,000 black other, right? So we're very rare birds.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me there's only 1.5 million of us in the whole UK, or in the whole UK?
Yes.
That can't be true. I feel like I know 2 million myself.
But think about it. We are a minority, and that's also one of the reasons why people. Hey Neil, that's also one of the reasons why people try to sort of talk about the UK as a white country, and sort of like as a way of, you know, it's their country. So, and I'm like, well, the amount of people, you know, being a minority doesn't mean that it's not our country.
Yeah. Fact.
Just because there's only one kid and two parents in the house, does that mean that the house don't belong to the kid?
Yeah. Fact.
Just because they're in a minority. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's racist. It's racist.
Wow.
It's
narrative
and a racist dialogue that we also sometimes have taken on ourselves.
100%.
You know what I mean? Sometimes protectively so, but also sometimes ignorantly. Do you know what I mean? Because just because you're black, it doesn't mean that you know black British history. Because black British history is something very special. It's not, you know, when I learned black history in school, it wasn't black British history. No. It was apartheid, which was also important to learn about, but it was apartheid and the civil rights movement in the States. Right? I wasn't told about Shirley Bassey. You follow me?
No, I think no.
Yeah.
This is huge. No, this is huge.
Right. I wasn't told about John Archer, who was the first black British mayor, and he was black British mayor in Wandsworth. Right. My school was named after him. It was only after I left school that I found out why my school was called John Archer.
Wow.
Right. So, what I'm saying is that black British history is not something, but it's something. So it's something that you have to seek out for yourself, in order to celebrate, right? And
No, it's massive. It's massive because I think I do. Even, you know, the typical questions, you know, growing up of like, where you from, and then England, where you really from, and you know that many people, and I'm not that old, you know, well, I'm getting older, but many people, you know, have that experience and remember that experience of having those conversations till you eventually say Jamaica or Nigeria or Eritrea or whatever.
Yeah, you give in? I don't ever give in.
Well, now as an adult,
just say back.
This is what really happened, because both my parents were actually born in the UK as well.
Yeah, exactly.
They just kept on going. So I'd be like, okay, no, but where are your parents born? My parents were born here. Oh, where were your like, how far?
Yeah, because the question is, why are you black? That's the question, and it's rooted in the idea that if you are black, you're not really British, right? And also you've got to ask yourself the question, why doesn't that happen to Italian people? Why doesn't that happen to, you see what I'm saying? Or maybe it does happen to them, but why is that your skin color? That's really the question that's been asked.
Yeah.
So there's a difference, and what people don't understand is that there's a difference between ethnicity and nationality. Yeah. So my ethnicity is a lot more complicated than my nationality, but it also stems from the idea that that particular skin colors belong in particular parts of the world. So
Yeah.
if you have that skin color, then that's it. You just belong in that part of the world. That's where you belong.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
we're all just humans. You know, there's no
Yeah.
races in reality. There's just people.
Yeah.
It's a mental construct, right?
Mhm.
But I love what you guys are doing in terms of Black Future, because I'm really into that. You know, the whole Afrofuturism world is something that I think is very exciting. Just talking about, okay, what are the possibilities in the future? And you know, I get really annoyed when Black history is just described as, okay, now we're going to talk about slavery.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
Mhm.
there are lots of big, huge civilizations around Africa way before slavery. And before slavery, Black people weren't seen in the stereotypical negative way that they are now. Slavery wasn't something that was attached to skin color. Slavery was an economic issue, right? That you could become a slave. You know, biblically speaking, when you look at the texts, you know, in the Hebrew, the word for slave is the same word as the word for servant, because you could end up slaving yourself out to someone to pay off your debt. You know, I don't have the money to pay, so now I will work
Work it off.
and until my debt is paid, right? So that was slavery, and it's not even really slavery. What happened in the transatlantic slave trade wasn't really slavery. It was more like indentured servitude, because slavery would have had the connotation that there was a way of buying yourself out of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or slavery was also had a connotation that you had in some way decided that you would allow this to happen to yourself.
Right.
Right. So you've got all these civilizations like Benin and all these different ancient civilizations where creativity plays a very big part in those cultures, because there's so much art that's made.
Yeah.
And it just shows you, well, this is a rich culture. They just made all this art. Like, how did they have time? You know, I mean, you can see the pandemic starting to hit, and then people talking about, you know, people who do music, they should find a different way to pay themselves, etc., right? Because it's like, okay, trim the fat. Creativity is one of the things that goes. It is, whether we like it or not, a nice added extra, even though it's not optional for our health and our well-being, I would argue.
Yeah.
But in reality,
yeah,
it doesn't always pay the bills to sing that song.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you've got all these cultures that have had this really strong creative element to them, and then we're in a situation now where you can see a sense of sort of the narrative needing to be changed, and Black Futures is the only way for you to do that, to start to create a different narrative now, where you say, do you know what I mean? I know Luke. Hey Mark, you know, I know Luke, and he's not a criminal. Do you know what I mean? I don't, you know, I got contacted once to sort of get in touch with some people, some hard guys. You know what I mean? I only knew one really. You know what I mean?
One soldier.
Yeah, I mean, if it was going back years now, then I would have knew a few more man there. You get me? But like, it was like, okay, who do I know? All the people that I know, the Black guys that I know, are, you know, I mean, family men with 3 kids, who are either self-employed or working in some high-paid job. You know what I'm saying? There's not any that stereotypical view of roadman. I don't know any of those. I don't know anyone in jail right now.
Yeah.
Everyone I know's out. Everyone I know got out already. But do you see what I'm saying? So Black Futures, you know, that needs to be the focus, because if Black history just starts from, we were slaves, then drop me out. You know what I mean? There's so much more that's something, a new development, like from the 1600s on, right?
Yeah.
Before that, you've got people like Saint Maurice. Do you know who Saint Maurice is? Saint Maurice is the patron saint of Germany, and he's a Black guy. And he was a general in the Roman army, because Rome had an empire that spanned over to Africa. right? He was sent to a town in Germany to kill these people, and when he got there, he found out they were Christians like him, and then he decided he's not going to do it, right? So I think he ended up getting killed, right? So he became a martyr for his faith.
Wow.
And even up to now, if you look at the Pope's coat of arms, St. Maurice is on there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. No.
So you know, and even the mad thing is, I went to Latvia one time to speak, and I went for a conference in Latvia, and I saw this picture of this black man, and I just assumed, wow, this must have been where the slaves was. You know what I mean? This is like, wow, look, this is still there. This is where they used to sell us. You know what I mean?
God.
And then later on, when I did this research on St. Maurice, I found out that it's a portrait of him. It's a tribute to St. Maurice.
In Latvia.
Wow. So it just goes to show that our whole understanding of the narrative has been coloured by, you know, the slavery narrative.
Yeah.
Which tries to sort of reduce all black people to that, right? Even people that have never, in their lineage, they've never even gone through the transatlantic slave trade. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, like, the whole of Africa is stained by what they did. You know what I'm saying? So it just made me think, wow, that is deep.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's huge. I think that's huge. Both the history before the slave trade and what we're gonna do now are like the stories that have not been told as yet, you know, in its entirety. I know I've heard that there's a film coming out, or meant to be being created about, is it Mansa Musa, or one of an African king. I think he was one of the richest men in the world at one point, if not the richest man in the world.
I think he's probably the richest man that's ever lived. That's the way they.
Yeah. Say again. That's why they.
Well,
that's why they what?
I said he's typically regarded as the richest man that's ever. But these films do exist. A lot of these films exist that we might not know about them, but there's a lot of these films that exist that paint black people in this sort of royal way. You know, Black Panther as a film was so important because it was one of the first time we'd seen ourselves not as slaves or drug dealers or drug addicts or prison inmates.
And it's funny because it's interesting. And also another kind of pattern I'm seeing is having one black man in the film and he's extremely camp. I don't know if you've noticed that as well. And you know me, I love all people. That's not the point. The point is that I feel that in films, there's always some agenda to present, especially the black man. I feel, no, black women as well, actually, in film, just in certain kind of not rounded characters, right?
I think.
I don't know.
Not well. I don't know if you know, the campness or like a homosexual character.
No, not homosexual. No. See, this is the difference. It's not the fact that they are homosexual. It's the camp nature, because not all homosexual people are camp, right? But
all right. So what you're saying is it's sort of
it's more the
So you're saying I get you. I didn't. I misunderstood you.
Yeah.
I think you're saying that I wasn't going to say that you were trying to talk about it in terms of a sexual orientation.
Yeah, no, that's
that you. I know that you were talking more in terms of, you know, you might not have a character that's that masculine.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that it's true that, you know, whenever a black person comes on the screen, for me, I'm thinking to myself, all right, are you playing a black person, or are you just playing a person? You know what I mean? And when you think about the white characters who are taking up these roles, their whiteness is not a factor. They're a doctor,
right?
Or they're a soldier, or you know what I mean? And it's like, why is race being referred to? It's almost as if when race is being presented as a part of the narrative, that it's it's a way of sort of referring to some of these stereotypes. So you get someone who, even if it's in the media, like on the news or whatever, it's just like, yeah, it was a black man who stole the bag or whatever. And it's just like, okay, well, why is, you know what I mean? Or if they're talking about a role and they say, yeah, is a black man in the role of, why is his skin color of any importance in this context, right? It's because it's something other, and it's something that people want to sort of highlight. So coming back to your point about stereotypical
roles being
that attributed to black characters, I think that it's 100% right. And you know, why when we were growing up in the 80s, you know what I mean, watching Magnum PI, you weren't watching it because you're too young, but Magnum PI, right? And Magnum PI with Tom Selleck, and Tom Selleck is the PI driving his Ferrari, and he's sort of like seen away. And then you've got TC, who's the black guy on the show. You know what I mean? I always just think to myself, why can't it be TC's show? You know what I mean? Why is the black person a supporting role and allowed to be a part of the white main character's role? Why can't the black character have their own role?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why can't they tell their own stories? So again, Black Futures is now the time for Black Brits especially to tell their own story. That's why I really what Steve McQueen's done with Small Axe. In terms of the anthology. He's got like John Boyega in it. He's got Letitia Wright in it. Kira Anderson, our good friend Kira Anderson, she's in it as well.
Nice.
And as I said, my father's as well. My father's in it as well, and it just allows for a new way of looking at blackness to come to the forefront, right?
John Sharp. We had
John Sharp. Yeah, we had John Sharp, and again, even those blaxploitation movies, right? That genre, that American genre, allowed people to see themselves, and that was really important. I suppose growing up in the UK,
I definitely see myself.
In the UK, who did we have? Do you know what I mean? On TV, I suppose we had Lenny Henry. Back in the day, we had Lenny Henry. He was telling black narratives and stories. We had stuff like the Real McCoy. They were telling black stories and you know, narratives. But we need more of that, because without those stories being told, then it's just a lot of complaining. It's like, oh yeah, why don't they ever tell? Well, okay, you got to do something about it then. You know, that's why it was with Alpha Monk, when I've been doing these programs, like when we did the Black Hair program last year, and we talked about the celebrating the creativity of black hair. That it was important for us to take it and look at it positively, because I had people coming to me and saying to me, yeah, they're telling me my hair is unprofessional. And it's because we've got locks. So you're saying, okay, so culturally speaking, so you're saying my hair texture is, you're not saying that you know what I mean? It would be different if they said, your hair's dirty and it's messy and it stinks. That's something different. But they said your hair is that style is unprofessional. You know what I'm saying? So you know, you're just dealing with a whole new level of prejudice.
Whole new level.
But what do we do about that? There's no point in us like complaining, like, oh, you know, they always treat us like this. You know, there's a place for that. I understand the venting, I get it, but at some point you have to get over it and then start changing the narrative. What are you going to do? So when I do my events, or my happenings, I'm always thinking about that, because I want to create a space where this culture can thrive. You know, the same way that the early black church did, and the same way that early black musicians did, right? That's where we've had most success, by being creative about it.
And you know, it's interesting that you brought it to that point, to that place about the black church, because I do feel as though the black church has an opportunity to really speak into some of this, a lot of this, right? Because it's just uniquely positioned. It has established itself. We're quite established in this country, and yeah, I think that there is something I would have liked to have seen, even with all the kind of social unrest, or social writing, as I like to call it, that's taking place. I don't feel as though we've had a voice in it or had anything to say, speak to it. And I think the church is one of the more galvanizing forces of the Black community. Um, and it would be nice to, yeah, to use that influence, to use that community, to use that reach, to actually say, all right, let's push the agenda forward in this way or that way. And I would love, and that for me is, the small role that I would love Templeway to start to play in that is just to, that's why, starting with something like this where we're having conversations, because this is where it begins, and then we galvanize, we use it as a galvanizing force, because at the end of the day, what is faith if it's irrelevant to everyday life? There's just no point in it otherwise.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's just the challenge we face is that for a lot of people, they feel that church is something otherwise, is concerned with the otherworldly.
Yes, the afterworld, the afterlife.
Yeah, and that Jesus is concerned with the otherworldly.
Yeah.
But there's very little, biblically speaking as a theologian, there's very little, biblically speaking, in the Bible about the afterlife. It's entirely obsessed with this life, and how you bring the kingdom to bear now. So it's a bit tricky because it's not necessarily in vogue for a lot of the church, in terms of it being something that we feel that, all right, we want to further the agenda of blackness through through church. Is what I'm saying. It feels a little bit too political for some people. It feels a little bit like, they've gone they've stepped over the bounds in some way. But obviously, wherever there's a wrong that needs to be righted, then we're talking about this type of principle that Jesus talked about with the kingdom, right?
Yeah.
Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, is sort of an idealist's dream.
Yeah.
That line there.
Interesting.
Right. That anywhere that people are being treated unfairly for whatever reason, that
exactly.
that the church should, hey Tatenda, good to see you, brother. That the kingdom is in somehow active and playing a role to sort of make a difference, right? So I think you're right that the Black church does have a role. And I think in the States they're a little bit better at it than we have over here, in terms of galvanizing. There are some churches who are moving forward in this way, but again, there's been that sort of split between those two. The culture, the same culture has produced both Negro spirituals and the blues. Like Black culture has created those two things. Yeah. It's the intersection between Christianity and Black creativity that created the spirituals. Yeah. Intersection between humanity, sensuality, and social justice that created the blues, right? And reggae, jazz for that matter, right? So when you've got these two, you've got this culture that's got these two streams almost, that the two of them couldn't, even though we live in both. Talk to most musicians, they play with whoever. Do you know what I mean? They play with Lady Gaga on tour, and then on the weekends they're playing in church. It's the same people, it's the same culture. Do you see what I'm saying? So in our minds, there's this, in the minds of a lot of rank and file church members, there's a separation between those two things. The social, the political doesn't spill over into the spiritual, so to speak, because here we're just dealing with the other world, we're just dealing with utopia. Only when we realize that our Christianity, and that any religion that doesn't deal with the world's problems and deal with humanity's problems is not going to be around for long. Right? Until we really recognize that, then there's not going to be that type of galvanization that you are calling
dreaming of.
Yeah, because people are always going to be like, yeah, but we're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And the problem is that then you could end up going into a stage where, hey, you could end up going into a stage where you, instead of actually getting on with doing the work, then you're spending all your time defending what you're doing, and then
Yeah,
for that.
of course. Yeah.
Right. So, I suppose it's just like anything else. You start off, yes, bro. You start off with the few who are willing, with the willing few, and then you start a fire going forward from there. And I hope that Alpha Monk can play a real role in doing that and galvanizing people just to change the narrative. That's the most important thing. And if that doesn't groove for people who believe in kingdom, then I would question the validity of a Christianity or a religion and any other spiritual practice or pursuit so easily dislodged by a Black Lives Matter march or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, or so easily dislodged by Black Panther movie or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have to question whether or not, if you're so afraid of those things, then perhaps our spirituality isn't as robust as it ought to be. Yeah. It's like with people saying, the Black Lives Matter, I was going to support them, but, they did this and they did that. And I'm like, okay, you're trying to find reasons to renege on your allyship, or are you really riding? If you're really riding, then, you know what I'm saying? You're riding. You ain't here for, it's like they almost expect Black activists to be perfect, or they expect Black activists to agree on everything. And again, that's racism, right? So you're saying, white people are allowed to have differences of opinions about things and still be, they're allowed to be individuals.
Yeah. We've got to be a monolith. A monolith.
Yeah. We've got to be a sort of, it's like, I'll have people coming up to me and asking me about, black on black crime. I'm like, what are you asking me for?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I have, it's my job to sort of educate this person about that, or it's my job to speak to it, because I must know about it, because we're one glutinous mass.
Yeah.
As Black people, we're just all one glutinous mass, and we all agree about everything, don't we? We all just say that, of course not. We have differences of opinions like anyone else, and we have differences of views about how to deal with racism, or how to, you'll have some Black people who say to you, just ignore it, or you'll have Black people who say to you, racism don't exist, or you'll have Black people who say to you, I don't talk about it here because I'm being strategic, and if I don't, do you know what I mean? Which is also valid. We'd be exhausted. So you can't take up everything, right? So I think once we sort of get to a point where we recognize that we need to move forward and try to create this future together, and that we're on a journey, and that we're not perfect in it, then I think we'll start to see some of those changes, bro.
Bobby, I want to say thank you so much for spending time with us today, man, and for bringing being you, bringing the wisdom, bringing the knowledge, bringing the love, and thank you everyone who has tuned in. I'd encourage you wholeheartedly to check out what Bobby's doing over through Alpha Monk, and be part of one of his next happenings. I've been to probably all of them, and they've been amazing. So please do check it out and continue to support what we're doing here through the month of October and hopefully beyond. Bobby, thank you so much, brother.
Thanks for having me,
usual, it's just amazing, and thank you for enlightening us. And we look out for Small Acts on Amazon. I think it's out in November. I think I did see an advert.
Small Acts,
and we'll look out for the cameo from Daddy Bovell.
Milton.
All right, Bobby, thanks a lot, bro. Speak to you soon.
One love, my brother. God bless, man. Peace.
Thanks, man.